Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe and share. Help build my channel and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. Imagine this. It's the year 48 AD, and while Roman legions are still battling Celtic tribes across Britain, something extraordinary is happening in the misty hills of what would later become Glastonbury. According to an astonishing tradition that has survived nearly 2,000 years, the Virgin Mary herself is living out her final days in a temple built not by human hands, but by her own Son, Jesus Christ. This isn't the stuff of medieval legend or modern conspiracy theories. This is a claim supported by some of the most respected figures in early Christian history, documented by saints and scholars, and maintained by the Catholic Church itself for over a millennium. Yet it's a story that challenges everything most people think they know about early Christianity. Welcome to one of history's most intriguing mysteries, the story of Our Lady's Dowry, and the revolutionary claim that Jesus Christ personally established a sacred sanctuary for his mother in ancient Britain. The tale begins with Joseph of Arimathea, the wealthy Jewish merchant who, according to the Gospels, provided his own tomb for Jesus' burial. But the British tradition tells a far more extensive story. According to these accounts, Joseph wasn't just a minor biblical figure who disappeared after the crucifixion. Instead, he played a crucial role as what the ancient sources call a paranymphos, literally meaning bridesman, who was entrusted with the most sacred duty imaginable, escorting the Virgin Mary to a divinely constructed sanctuary in Britain. This wasn't just any building. The sources describe a temple that Jesus himself had built with his own hands during his time in Britain, a spotless legacy that he bequeathed to his mother as her earthly inheritance. The site became known as Our Lady's Dowry, a place where Mary would live out her remaining years in sanctity before being laid to rest in 48 AD, during the height of the Roman conquest of Britain. What makes this story particularly compelling isn't just its audacity, but the caliber of witnesses who vouched for its authenticity throughout history. Fast forward to the 6th century, and one finds perhaps the most remarkable testimony in the entire historical record. Saint Augustine of Canterbury, the man credited with bringing Christianity to Anglo-Saxon England, wasn't just aware of this tradition, he was absolutely convinced of its truth. In fact, he was so moved by what he witnessed at Glastonbury that he wrote extensively about it to Pope Gregory the Great himself. Augustine's letter, which still exists today, reads like something from a fantasy novel, yet it bears the authority of one of the most important figures in early British Christianity. He describes discovering, in the western confines of Britain there is a certain royal island of large extent, surrounded by water, abounding in all the beauties of nature and necessaries of life. But this wasn't just any beautiful location. Augustine insisted that the first Christian converts in Britain had found there a church constructed by no human art, but divinely constructed, or by the hands of Christ himself, for the salvation of his people. The saint was particularly struck by the supernatural aspects of the site. He wrote that, "The Almighty has made it manifest by many miracles and mysterious visitations that he continues to watch over it as sacred to himself, and to Mary, the Mother of God." This wasn't casual observation. Augustine was writing to the Pope with what he clearly believed was one of the most important religious discoveries in Christian history. Perhaps most significantly, Augustine identified the location specifically as the place where the very first disciples of Christ in Britain had discovered this divine temple, and he was writing about events that had occurred nearly 600 years earlier, suggesting that the tradition had been consistently maintained across centuries. But the story takes an even more extraordinary turn in the year 540 AD, when Saint David of Wales arrived at Glastonbury with plans to rededicate the ancient church. David was no minor figure. He was one of the most important saints in Welsh history, with full ecclesiastical authority to perform such ceremonies. His intention was straightforward: to formally rededicate the church according to proper Christian protocol. What happened next, according to the meticulously kept records of William of Malmesbury, defies easy explanation. On his first night at Glastonbury, David experienced a vivid dream in which Jesus Christ himself appeared and delivered a startling message. The rededication was completely unnecessary because Christ himself had, long before, dedicated the church in honor of his mother, and that the sacrament ought not to be profaned by human repetition. The implications were staggering. Here was divine testimony that the church had been personally consecrated by Jesus himself, specifically in honor of his mother Mary. David, despite his authority and original intentions, immediately obeyed the vision and cancelled the rededication ceremony, allowing the original divine consecration to stand. But David didn't stop there. Recognizing the extraordinary historical importance of what had been revealed to him, he embarked on an ambitious construction project to ensure that future generations would never forget what had happened at this sacred site. In 546 AD, just 6 years after his vision, Saint David erected a new stone structure over Mary's grave, carefully encasing the original wattled church in lead to preserve it for posterity. But his masterstroke was the installation of a commemorative pillar topped with a brass tablet bearing one of the most remarkable inscriptions in Christian history. The tablet proclaimed, "The first ground of God, the first ground of the saints in Britain, the rise and foundation of all religion in Britain, and the burial place of the saints." This wasn't mere religious poetry, it was a definitive historical claim asserting that this site represented the very beginning of Christianity in Britain and served as the burial place of multiple saints, with Mary as the most prominent among them. The monument's survival is almost as remarkable as its message. The brass tablet and its stone pillar endured for nearly 1,000 years, remaining intact even through the tumultuous period of Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. When it was finally recovered, Archbishop Usher documented its existence in 1639, and it passed through the hands of several prominent historians, including Sir Henry Spelman, who described it in his scholarly work, Concilia. Perhaps no figure is more crucial to understanding this tradition than William of Malmesbury, the 12th century Saxon historian who was granted unprecedented access to what may have been one of the world's most important libraries. The abbot of Glastonbury didn't just give William permission to research the abbey's history, he invited him to live there and provided him with complete access to the famous Glastonbury Library, which contained original documents dating back to Druidic times. This access was extraordinary because William was researching and writing before the Great Fire that would eventually destroy the abbey and its incredible collection of historical documents. In essence, he was working with primary source materials that would later be lost forever, making his work potentially the most precious document of the British Christian Church in existence. William's research methodology was remarkably thorough. He wasn't simply collecting legends or folklore, he was systematically examining original documents, cross-referencing sources, and applying the scholarly standards of his time to create a comprehensive history of British Christianity from its very beginnings. His findings consistently supported the tradition of Mary's presence in Britain, Jesus' personal construction of the sacred temple, and the site's role as the foundation of British Christianity. The story takes a poignant turn in the 20th century with the work of Reverend Lionel Smith at Lewes, the vicar of Glastonbury, who dedicated much of his career to investigating these extraordinary claims. Lewes wasn't a casual enthusiast, he was a serious scholar who applied rigorous historical methodology to examine the evidence for Jesus and Mary's British residence. By 1953, after years of painstaking research, Lewes made a breakthrough. He wrote excitedly about discovering much more authoritative information from rare old documents that would prove revelatory on the subject. He was confident that this new evidence would provide incontestable evidence to validate the ancient traditions once and for all. Lewes was preparing to publish what he intended as his definitive work on the subject, the culmination of decades of research that would finally settle the historical questions surrounding Glastonbury's origins. He was 86 years old and knew that time was running short. Tragically, Lewes died suddenly just 1 week after writing about his discoveries. His revolutionary findings died with him, leaving historians to wonder what evidence he had uncovered that had made him so confident about proving the tradition's validity. But Lewes wasn't the only modern researcher to find compelling evidence. In 1921, Dean Armitage Robinson conducted systematic archaeological excavations at Glastonbury and made a remarkable discovery. He found the actual base of the original pillar that St. David had erected in 546 AD. This wasn't just a lucky find, it was scientific confirmation of the historical accounts. The excavation proved that the medieval sources were accurate in the descriptions of the physical monuments and their locations. Robinson's discovery meant that visitors today can actually see and examine the remains of the memorial that St. David created over 14 centuries ago. The archaeological evidence extends beyond just the pillar base. Excavations have revealed multiple construction phases of the site, corresponding to the various building periods described in the historical sources. Material analysis has confirmed the presence of the original wattle construction encased in lead, exactly as described in the medieval accounts. If you would like further context and the rest of the story, check out previous videos and future videos. If you would like more information where to research this subject, pause this image and look into these resources or find resources in description. If you have book sources or links of your own on this subject, please share in comments or email me. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this forgotten biblical story. Leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. This is very helpful. Join me next time for another lost story of our biblical history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.